Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nicky V. I'm a studio musician and producer here in Nashville. And today I thought I'd talk about how to get in the session scene, right? And there's a ton of YouTube channels out there that talk about how to do this, and we kind of break it down. There's a few things we talk about that are kind of like the standard things, right? It's like you have the personality for it, and then the playing, the pocket, the feel, the tone, all the things, tuning, everything. But all those things are kind of like assumed that that's a given if you're going to do this line of work. And you have to be a good hang, all the typical things. But there's a few things people don't talk about that I think were really helpful for me and kind of escalated the trajectory of my career when I got to town. I thought I'd share a few of those things. So the first one that I want to bring up might not be obvious, but it's actually, to me, one of the most important, and that's charting, learning how to actually chart a song properly, because what it does is it tends to open up the door if you are the first point of contact. So hang in there with me on this. The first thing that happens, typically, if you play a chordal instrument like a guitar or keys or something like that, you are going to be the first point of contact a lot of the times when it comes to finding artists, songwriters, and people that need their music recorded. And if they come to you and they're like, hey, I'm looking to get a cleaner version of this acoustic guitar on my demo or something like that. Hey, that's cool. And you chart it out for them. Even if it's a 4-chord song, just chart the song out and put everything dead on the grid. And what that does is whenever you send them the files for this, be like, hey, here's a chart to assist anybody else who might be involved with the project. And that could spark something in their mind being like, oh, wait, I can actually put bass, drums, keys on this. What happens is they circle back around to you and they're like, hey, I would love to, how much would it cost to get this done? And that puts you in a better negotiating position because they're asking you. You're not going to them being like, hey, let me produce your song for you. And it immediately puts you in a leadership position is what it does. And that allows you to hire other people. And I've said this 1,000 times on the channel, but the best way to get work is to give work. And so if you're wanting to work with somebody, don't just be like, hey, man, I'd love to work together. Hire them for something. Figure out an excuse to pay them, and they're much more inclined to answer the phone and potentially reciprocate. Never expect reciprocation. Like, don't hire people thinking, okay, if I hire them, they're going to hire me or pull me into that circle. Don't expect that. But a lot of the time, that's kind of what ends up happening. So that's a great little strategy you guys can use that I've done a ton of work on because I work on all these different websites online, and now it's mostly email referrals. I do a bunch of tracking sessions in town as well, but when it first started out, most of it was people just reaching out wanting guitar parts done. And I would chart out the song, like I said, put it all dead on the grid, and organize it in a way that if we decide to put other instruments on it at a later date, it's no problem. They don't have trouble lining up to loose guitars that are not quite on the grid or something. Everything's dead on in tune. So you're providing a solid foundation that's not going to cause any trouble for anybody else going after you if you're doing it remotely. We're going to talk about the remote stuff a little more later on. But one more thing I want to mention about the charting is if you can manage to chart a song cleanly, and I'll do a whole separate video later on about charting. I wasn't going to because I feel like there's a bunch of videos out there, but one thing that pops up in the comments the most is people asking me to do a charting video. So I'll do that here in the next couple months for you guys. But one of the things that charting does is it puts you in the position of session leader a lot of the time. So if you are able to write clean charts and do it quickly if you're on a session and make them super easy to navigate with no repeats, because engineers don't like reading repeats and nobody really likes reading repeats. It's all on one page, just a nice clean chart. If you're able to do that efficiently and accurately without having to bang on acoustic guitar, so just do it by ear, this puts you in an amazing position to potentially be a session leader. And there's a few benefits to being session leader. Number one is you get paid double. So instead of getting paid $500 for the session that day, you're getting paid $1,000. And that's nice, especially when you got bills to pay. Nashville's expensive. It's really expensive. So the second thing that it does is that it puts you in a position to hire your friends and hire people that you want to work with, like I said earlier, because work attracts work. Don't expect the reciprocation, like I said. But a lot of the times if I'm wanting to break into a certain clique, right? There's a certain clique of guys that work a lot together. And I see people kind of floating in and out of that circle to where I know they aren't just like a lockdown crew. I'll start hiring a few people within that circle. And most of the time they're like, hey man, I got this overdub. I need you to do whatever. Cool. Our regular guy isn't available. Or we got a session at Dark Horse in a couple weeks. Can you do that? Or wherever it's at. And this kind of stuff comes up. So how I got on the scene whenever I first got here is I delivered excellent work with great foundational guitars and kind of laid the groundwork to move myself into session leader and producer roles because the clients trusted me. And they knew that I delivered quality work and on-time work. And we're going to talk about the on-time work thing as well, but let's talk about the remote thing now. So, like I said, studios are shutting down every day in town, but more music is being made than ever. And, just because everybody has a laptop and everybody's a producer now. So what that means is if you have the ability to record yourself at home this does a couple things for you. A lot of the people that I do tracking sessions with every week, also sometimes the budget just simply isn't there to pay for an engineer and a studio and do all this stuff if we're doing like demo sessions or something. And so, hey man, we'll just email it around. And that happens all the time. And sometimes you get a better product like that. It just depends on the song because, a lot of the times we're able to kind of dig deeper on parts and we have access to all of our gear here at our house, which is nice. So there's advantages and disadvantages to doing remotely versus tracking sessions. That's probably a whole separate video. And the important thing about having a remote setup whenever you first start out recording is that it gives you the ability to fail in private. You don't want your first session to be at Ocean Way or Blackbird and you sitting around, you have A-listers all around you and you can't hang. You can't get your guitar in tune, or you're, a quarter inch ahead of the click, or your pocket's not right. Something's off. And if you walk into your first session with never doing that, that's exactly what's going to happen. It definitely happens. But if you do this work remotely, there's still a learning curve when you go to a tracking session, but this helps prepare you for it. And you can fail in private. The first 300 songs I recorded on Sound Better and Fiverr and all these different websites were terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I was failing in private there. But I was charging nothing for the tracks, and most of the clients were still happy with it, most of them. But it allowed me to basically test the waters out, figure out the little nuances of building parts, leaving space for myself, how to carve out sections for myself with EQ rather than just turning up the volume. And like I said, on your first couple sessions you get on, it's still going to be a much different thing because the speed at which things are done are probably a lot faster than what you're typically doing at your house remotely. People understand that, and a lot of the cats that I work with that are older guys that have way more experience than I do and huge credits and all that. I've been in town 6 years and I've played on sessions every week and I do 5 to 65 tracks a month at the house. So I'm doing this all the time nonstop. But when I first got to town and I started doing tracking sessions for the first time, a lot of the A-listers that were around me were so cool and understanding because they were in the same place at one point. I was definitely not as fast as them. I'm still not as fast as a lot of them. When I say speed, I don't mean like how fast you can play. I mean finding the part, getting in tune quickly, being efficient on the session. And they understand that, a lot of them, I'm 31, have 20 years of experience on me, and they're cool with that because they know where they used to be 20 years earlier. And most of them are very patient, and a few of them are definitely champions for the next generation of cats coming up. And whenever I'm 50, I'll be hopefully as fast and efficient as those guys are. And there'll be guys in their 20s and 30s doing the same thing that I'm patient with. And this is just how the cycle goes and how you keep lifting up the people around you. So the two things covered so far: learn how to chart because it puts you in a session leader position and sometimes producer position. Number two is get your remote set up if you're wanting to be a studio guy, because that is where you start developing the skill set that transfers. Some of it transfers over to tracking sessions. Number three, and I mentioned this one earlier, I get a ton of work because people simply cannot make deadlines. And as crazy as that sounds, it is unfortunately very true. I got a ton of overdub work when I first got to town simply because people were like, yeah, man, I've reached out to so-and-so if they're on tour for the next, 3 months or whatever, and I've never got my tracks. They said it was going to be 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. Do you want me to do it? And they're like, yeah, I'd love you to do it. I'm like, okay, great. I can have it done in 48 hours for you. And they're like, amazing. And they get their tracks. All the stems are dead on the grid. The files are managed and organized nicely, and it's all presented in email, very clear cut. And that level of communication and organization sells itself in town eventually. People realize you're a person that keeps things organized. You make deadlines. You keep on schedule. And if you end up being in a session leader position, your job is to keep everybody on schedule for that session. If you have, say you got to get 2 songs done in 3 hours, at an hour and a half in, you should probably be making sure the train's moving on time to get to that second song. So this is just a few of the things that I've noticed since I got here. And like producers that just never deliver the stems or never even deliver a final mix, I know this sounds absolutely insane, but I've produced multiple projects for people that paid to have tracks done and did tracking session the whole 9 yards and just never got the final mix. And it's been 2 years, literally 2 years. I mean, that blew my mind. A client literally came, yeah, man, this is back, in 2022. I paid him for it. I'm like, you paid him for it in full? He says, yeah, I just never got my stuff and I'm still waiting on it and this and that. I'm just tired of waiting. Let's just redo it. I didn't really like the experience anyways. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So give them a reasonable deadline that you think you can get it done by. And if I can give you any advice on that, if you think you can get it done in 7 days, tell them 9 days and then get it done in 3. So you're exceeding their expectations all the time. And say your regular mix guy you send stuff off to says, yeah, man, I'll have it done in 3 weeks. Tell the client a month. And then if it comes in 3 weeks to 2 weeks, great. If it comes in 4 weeks, that's all good. Say they're a little late, they had a family thing come up, whatever it is. Or they're swamped with work, the client's still happy, and expectations have been managed. So quick little recap of that rant I just went on there. Before I got to my first point about charting, I said that, it's assumed that the playing, whether it's the parts, the tuning, tone, feel, pocket, all that kind of stuff, that's assumed that has to be there, as well as the personality side of it as well, because music's psychological and you can't have somebody that's totally busting the vibe on a session because you're going to be sitting in there with those guys for 6 to 9 hours a day. So assuming all that's solid, so learn how to chart. It's going to stack the cards in your favor to potentially be a session leader, which increases your income, your ability to hire other people, which is going to rapidly expand your network more than if you're just sitting around waiting on the phone to ring. Number 2 is get your remote recording set up, because it's going to allow you to fail in private as you start to try to learn this skill set. And this is a super niche, weird skill set that you're getting ready to tackle. Or maybe you already started tackling it and you're trying to work into that session thing next, or the tracking sessions. And like I said, studios are shutting down every day, but more music's being made. So a ton of work, even after you get plugged in, is still going to be done online at your house. Number 3, exceed deadlines. That is a huge one that might not seem important. I can promise you that it is absolutely quintessential if you want to succeed in this town. And thankfully, there's a bunch of really talented musical idiots out there that don't know how to answer emails, text, phone calls, or get something done in a timely manner. So if you have the ability to do that, which everybody should have the ability to figure out how long it's going to take you to accomplish a certain job and let the client know, do that, and then exceed that expectation. I would say those 3 things right there should give you a good head start. And like I said, I don't see a lot of people talking about that online, and I haven't seen a lot of videos from my colleagues about it either, but that's what worked for me. And everybody's path is different. You're going to have to figure out what works for you guys. But if you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you think I'm totally full of crap, let me know. And if you have any questions down there, I do my best to respond to everybody. If any of this isn't clear, I'll try to clear it up for you down there. Let me know what else you guys want me to cover. I promise I'll end up doing a video on charting at some point. And appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to me ramble here on the channel. There's a bunch of other great channels out there you could be spending your time on, but you clicked on this video. I don't know if my thumbnail's going to be good or not. Hopefully the YouTube algorithm likes it. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.